Welcome to Ethos Effect Podcast.
Welcome to the Ethos Effect Podcast. After building and learning from failures,
We discovered our ethos and leveraged it
to scale, sell, and build again our seven-figure businesses.
whether you're starting out or leveling up.
This podcast is your source for innovation and lasting impact. Welcome to this week's episode of the Ethos Effect Podcast. Today, you've got just me, your host, Chelsea Ryckis, and I am taking you through very, very detailed our 5-step hiring process at Ethos Benefits. So the reason that I think it's important to do a show dedicated specifically to the hiring process is people, talent development, talent acquisition tend to be one of the hardest parts of owning a business. And even as a leader, right, or a manager, if that's part of your role, it can be incredibly challenging. It can also lead to burnout, and it's one of the main reasons that companies fail to scale at the rate that they should. So as everything in my life, I learned this the hard way. And these lessons that I'm going to share with you in this practice, it's tried and true by yours truly. But take it or leave it, right? If something doesn't work for you, no big deal. If something, maybe one part of the process is something that you could use to refine yours. So take it or leave it. But like I said, learned it the hard way. And since I've used this 5-step hiring process, this is what led to our scale and our growth that allowed us to sell off the portion of our book back in September of 2023. All right, so when I do this presentation in person, because I have spoken on the national stage with this presentation twice, usually the first slide that comes up is me in my pink suit, this headshot. Yes, it's a little bit edited. It's really pretty with the pink and, all of it. And then the next slide that I get to is crazy weird Barbie. So if you saw the Barbie movie, you know that like the one who's doing the weird cartwheels and she's just like a complete shit show. That's reality for me. And that was when I really got serious in my business about the hiring process, was because I was like crazy Barbie. I was telling everybody else that they were the problem in my head, of course. I was the problem. And actually my hiring process was the problem. So we all know the cost of turnover, right? The statistics say anywhere between 60 to 90% of a person's salary is what you're going to lose when you go through turnover. For me, when I looked at the numbers, it was actually even more than that, because a lot of the positions we hire for have such a specific skill set that's needed. So it's expensive, right? Turnover is expensive. Everybody knows this. So if you're going to refine a process within your leadership or your management, this is definitely the one that you want to do. So why did I get really granular? Well, I was getting burnt out. I was over it. And I just kept making the same mistakes over and over again. And I realized that I needed a process to protect myself from me. So I tend to let me make that more of a past tense. Before Donovan came into my life, I had this habit of wanting to save people. And that translated into my hiring. And I would hire the wrong people at the wrong price constantly because of their potential. So when Donovan came into my life, that quickly ended, and I learned from him how to remove the emotions from the hiring process. And then by adding in these checks and balances throughout the hiring process, I'm able to, again, protect myself from myself. As salespeople, if you tend to do the sales in your organization, you probably have this desire for people to like you, right? For people to think that your company is super impressive. You're almost selling them when they need to be selling you in a way. And, I want to really honor the hiring process and give it the attention it deserves, because it's such a big deal, right? To bring somebody into your organization, into your culture to represent your brand, it's a huge, huge deal. Not only is it expensive, right? But it's just your brand that's on the line and that presentation of your brand. But I also want to turn the tables a little bit. It's a huge deal for the employee, right? It's their livelihood. It's how they provide for their family. They're calling maybe their parents or their friends or their brothers and sisters and telling them about this new amazing opportunity. And they're literally giving you their life, right? We spend more time with our coworkers than we do with our family sometimes. They are giving us such a big part of who they are. So it is absolutely imperative that you honor them and their needs and desires as much as the company's. So this process is designed to really give full transparency so that the other person, the employee, right, the candidate, the applicant, they can see, is this an organization that I want to be a part of? Because how many times, and I can't see you, so if you're driving in the car and listening to this and you want to raise your hand, how many times have you hired the wrong person and then you felt like, man, this was a sheep in wolf's clothing? Wait, did I say that right? No, a wolf in sheep's clothing. You know what I'm trying to say. You feel like you got duped. You're like, man, this is not the same person. Well, guess how many times that happens to employees? I read a statistic, within the first 3 weeks or 3 days? Either way, super fast. During the onboarding process, they know if they're going to stay or not. So it is absolutely important that whoever you portray yourself to be throughout this process is actually who you are, right? I find that the biggest compliment that I've ever gotten from employees or just people in general is, you are exactly who I thought you were. That means that you are doing a good job appropriately representing yourself and your brand throughout the hiring process. All right, so before we get into the exact process, I want you to brainstorm and think for a moment. What are the KPIs, key performance indicators, that are needed for success in this role? So I'm going to use a service role. Certain organizations will call this customer service, others will call it client success. We tend to lean more towards account management, account executive, those types of titles, but they are the ones responsible for retention of your clients, right? Absolutely critical role in all businesses. So to give you an idea, because like I said, we're going to get granular, the KPIs that I will measure, so let's take the account executive role. The KPIs that I measure on a weekly basis to our entire team, full transparency every single week, are the following. How quickly did we respond to the first inquiry? How long did it take us to resolve that inquiry? Were we giving updates every 24 to 48 hours to the client or the employee along the way? How many total requests is this one person working, and what is their close percentage compared to the prior week? How many requests are open more than 3 business days without updates? That's a huge no-no in our place. And there is another one here. But if you're not picking up a theme, it's how quickly are we communicating to our clients and how quickly are we actually resolving the problem? So those are the main ones. But those are our actual KPIs that our CRM is able to pull from our ticketing system. So I can see and look at the click of a button every single one of these every single week. So if, with all of that said, if you know that timeliness to resolution and timely response, as well as consistent, thorough communication back to the client throughout as a KPI, guess what I'm going to be looking for during my hiring process? Are they following up with me? Are they quick to respond to my emails? How long, if I am waiting on something from them, are they meeting that deadline? Things like that. So think about your KPIs, the actual things that are going to make them successful in their role. So keep that in your mind throughout this conversation. And then the second thing I want you to keep in mind, just as important, if not more so, is the values. What are your company values, and what values do you need people to have when they come into your organization? I learned early on that me and my company are not for everybody. I wanted us to be, right? Like I said earlier, that sales mentality, you want everyone to like you. You want everyone to think that you're doing good work and be part of your mission, but that's just not reality. Our big values are, if something can be done better, it should be. That's it. We have a bunch more, but that is the foundational value that I hire on. If something can be done better, it should be. Does the person that I'm talking to actually believe that? Or are they more, let me kind of sit back, fly under the radar? That's something, that process could be improved a little bit, but we're really busy right now, so we're going to table that for next quarter. Biggest pet peeve of mine is when you're working to get something done and someone puts the timeline out like 3 months or says, that's a 2024 or 2025 project. Like, it's steam out my ears. Things have to be done. If they're important, they need to be done quickly. But my point is for us, I need to get people on my team in order for them to be successful and for us to have a good relationship. I know that people need to be up to something bigger. They aren't there to just clock in and clock out. They really believe in a mission. They believe they can change and impact healthcare positively. And they truly believe that if something is broke in their world, not even just in our business, but in their world, if something isn't working, they have the initiative and the desire to improve it, personally, professionally, in all things. Those are the people that are successful. So again, what are your values of your organization and what are your KPIs? I really want you to keep that in your mind as we go through now the 5 steps. So the first thing that I'm doing, obviously, is I'm putting out our job description and the application online. So lots of different places, depending on the technical needs of the role, I may hire a recruiter, but most of the time, we're just putting it out online. So when I start to I'll get all the resumes in, I'll do my review, and you could have somebody else do this for you. I have tried that in the past, but I've just found that with the size that we're at right now, that it still is really important that I am actually doing this part of the process. So when I like somebody and the resume, I'm going to send them the recruitment packet. So we have an entire recruitment packet, and on it outlines our exact 5-step process. So they can see exactly what's happening. It has a timeline associated with each, the time commitment it will take for them to complete each assessment, who they're meeting with, what kind of meeting it is. And then, so that's the front page. It's a visual of the 5-step process. And then the next page is a deep dive into who we are, our values, what our culture is like. And it literally says things like, I pulled it up here. We enjoy a good fight and we love to win. Disrupting the industry has motivated us immensely. Because of this, we can come off as intense. And that's okay. We believe that our job starts when someone tells us no. Our intensity leads us to be direct with our clients and have high expectations of them and ourselves. Guess what? That was feedback I got when people quit years ago. You guys are too fucking intense. Okay, well, I guess I need to let people know that we're a little bit intense, right? Like and that's where that value comes in. You really believe that you can make positive change. And if something is broke, that you're going to fix it, right? So I'm telling them in this recruitment packet, before I've even had a phone conversation with them, exactly who we are. We're upbeat, we're dynamic, we're fun, we really care about each other. All of those things that make us who we are and our values are in this recruitment packet. That gives them the opportunity to say, you know what, maybe I want a more corporate environment. Maybe that's not for me. That's okay. You want to respect them as much as you respect yourself in this decision-making process. So step 1, and I'll just give you guys really quickly the 5 steps so you know where we're going. Number 1 is a phone interview with founder and president, me. Number 2 is complete the Ethos Benefits Skills Assessment. Number 3, complete online pre-employment assessment. Number 4, Zoom interview with founder and CEO, Donovan. 5, group interview. All right, so let's dig into number 1. So when I send them that recruitment packet, there's a link for them to schedule a 15-minute phone call with me. And let me tell you this, I've gone back and forth on having myself do the first phone call or have it be one of these assessments that we're going to get into. What I can tell you is that the caliber of people that I'm looking for, they want that first phone call. Like I said, they're looking to hear, what is this role? What are the expectations? Can I feel it? Do I like you? They're looking for that reassurance as much as I am. So here's what I do on the phone call. When they book the link, it sends a link to both of us and it explicitly tells them that they need to call me. So they're going to call me. And the first thing I'm going to do on this super quick phone interview is I'm going to let them know that this is an important process for both of us. So what I just shared with you earlier about respecting their time as much as you respect yours, that goes a long way in creating trust. And then I tell them about the position and I tell them about the skill sets that I need. And then I blatantly ask, does that sound like something that you're capable of and or interested in? And then they can say, actually, no, I thought it might have been more like this. And I'm like, well, that role's not available right now. I'd love to stay in touch, right? This is before I get into asking them all the questions. I tell them exactly what is going on. If they say, yes, oh, that's great, yeah. And I'd say, perfect. So let's get into the more important stuff. Let's talk about you. And then I start to ask them questions. The very first one is going to be, what did you learn about us during your research? ... Interviews are made or broken on this question I've found. So I've literally had people say, so when I ask, what research have you done on us? What did you find out? Oh, well, I didn't actually have the time to look you guys up, but you do 401ks, right? Yikes. Oh yeah, this is like Ethos Life Insurance Company, right? For the call center? Yikes. Red flag number one, if they didn't have the 5 minutes it took to look up you and your company, no thank you. So if that happens, I just end the interview right there, super respectfully. But hopefully that doesn't happen. But you want to know, like, what you're going to learn from that question is A, did they do their due diligence? Did they prepare for a call? Just like they would prepare for a call with one of your clients. But number two is, what did they find interesting about your company? So I've also had answers like, yeah, oh yeah, I saw you guys, I saw you do that podcast. That's super cool. I actually have a blah, blah, blah. It starts in a really nice conversation. Or I really like your approach to self-funded health insurance. I actually like self-funding is my passion. There's all these different things that are going to be of value to them. And then really quickly, you can see how that reflects upon their own internal values. So after that, you really want to ask open-ended questions that are going to get to the root cause of their why. So tell me, why are you in the market for a new position? What are you hoping to get out of the next endeavor? And then asking them things like, going back to your values, right? So what are your values? What questions could you ask that would reflect whether or not they believe those same values? So for me, I'm going to ask them questions like, tell me about a time where you were told no, but you felt like it was the right thing to do, so you kept going. What kind of problems did you solve in your last role? Yes, I know that you answered emails and you talked to clients and you did that kind of thing, but what real problems do you feel like you were solving? When did you go above and beyond to fix a process and be proactive about something because it just wasn't working the way it should be? Those are really great ways to see, because those are values that are very important to us. So that's what I mean by asking open-ended value-based questions. If the conversation is going really well, it's probably going to go a little longer than 15 minutes, but that's a great way to start off your hiring process. Quick 15-minute phone call. I'll also mention, depending on the role, so for me, an account executive or somebody on our account management team, they need to be good on the phone. They need to sound caring, engaging, compassionate, intelligent, all the things, right? So this is where I'm gauging, what is my client going to hear when they talk to this person, right? So just a sidebar there, if you're hiring for a more behind the scenes position, you might put less emphasis on those things, right? You might put more emphasis on their email communication, and you might shoot them over a few of those questions as pre-interview questions to see how do they do in an email setting. So think about that. Number two, this is my favorite. So skill assessment. And actually all of it's my favorite because I just really love this shit. But skill assessment, the software that I use is called Test Gorilla. There's a bunch of them out there. Test Gorilla is pretty affordable, pretty effective. And the tests, the actual skills that I'm assessing are Excel, email communication, complex problem solving, and time management. Because for me, to meet those KPIs that I said were really important earlier, those are the skills that I need to test for. So they're going to get a link, right? And it's in the same recruitment packet that they got. So the phone interview goes well. I let them know, hey, go ahead and move on to step 2 in that packet that I sent you. Let me know when you're done. Even though I get a notification, if I say, let me know when you're done, I can see, are you going to follow through? Did you listen, right? So they go on and they complete this assessment. And I have a little story about this. So some people may give you pushback, right? Like, well, I told you I was good at Excel. And that's a question I'll straight up ask, right? Like when I'm explaining the role to them at the beginning of the conversation and some of the skills, I mention Excel because for us, it's critical at that position. But I don't know how many of you have had this happen to you. Oh yeah, I'm amazing at Excel. And then, they start the job and you're like, hey, go do this claims analysis. This is where you pull your data from, manipulate it. This is what I'm looking for. We need graphs, we need tables. And they're like, okay. And they can't, right? And then you're like, oh, that's not good. So that was like year 1 and 2 mistakes that I made. So now I don't take people's word for it. Show me, right? Show me. So I have a quick story. Although if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, nothing's quick with you. We know this. But this old not old, let me rephrase that. This older man applied for a job, ton of experience, been in the industry a long time, very seasoned professional. The first call was amazing. We had established great rapport. He was confident. He was engaging. He knew all the right things to say. He knew all the right questions to ask. Awesome guy. So I was super excited to get him to step 2, right? So on the alternative, I was interviewing another woman, much younger, little quirky. Phone call was a little bit more awkward. You could tell she was nervous, maybe a little less seasoned, obviously, in how she interacts with executives. But overall, you could tell she knew her stuff and she was less confident, but she had all the potential in the world. So they both get their skill assessments completed. And here I am thinking this older gentleman was going to just knock it out of the park, right? He was dropping Excel terms like pivot tables and all this stuff. He came back, his Excel score was in the 29th percentile, which is not good, right? For self-funded claims analysis, healthcare management, not good. His overall score, so taking the average of all 4 of those areas where we are going to be measuring our success and KPI and skill set from, 39%. To give you an idea, the average person, we've had 120 people about take this exam, take this skill assessment. Our average score is 67%. His was 37 or 39, I can't remember, but really bad, right? Like under 40%. On the other hand, this younger woman, she scored in the 99th percentile on the Excel portion, one of the highest scores we've ever had. And when I had asked her, tell me about your Excel skills. Oh yeah, I know Excel. I really like working in Excel was actually what she said. I really like it. She didn't say anything that would have made me think she was actually freaking awesome at it. And then her overall score was about 84. So knocked it out of the park. There's only been a couple people higher than her since. But had I just went off that first interview, I would have hired this gentleman who, by the way, wanted well north of 6 figures and was, definitely underqualified for the role, but just spoke really well. So again, these steps in the interview process are designed to give you information about these people, allow you to see, do they have what it takes to meet your standards of success, your KPIs? Do they share the same values as you? So put in a skill assessment that is reflective of the role that you're hiring for. And again, it doesn't have to be those 4 things, right? What does that specific role need to be successful? That's where those KPIs come in. And then pick an actual assessment. These assessments can take anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes a piece. So, don't do too many. You're going to overwhelm them and then they're going to feel like they're working too hard during the interview process. But I don't mind when people give me pushback on this. It actually shows me after the first conversation, if you're not willing to do an assessment, you're not my people anyway. That's okay. So just be ready for that potentially. Once they get through that, the third step is this culture and personality assessment. So we use a company called Omnia, that's Omnia, Omnia. And this technology is super neat because they've used psychologists to develop these assessments, and that generally takes anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes to complete. And depending on the role that you're hiring for, so you give them your job description, you give them the KPIs, you give them your values, all the things we've been talking about, and they design one custom for that role for you. And then you take the test, the leaders in your company take the test, maybe the manager above the role that you're hiring takes the test, whoever can take it, right? And what it's going to do is it's going to compare your test results. So let's just use me as an example and Donovan. Donovan and I have our leadership profiles in Omnia. When we go to hire somebody on that's going to be directly reporting to us, it's going to compare their results to our leadership style, to our culture, to us basically. And it's going to give us the results based on that and say, this person requires really direct communication, therefore they would perform well under Donovan's direct supervision. Things like that. Like they could become frustrated with Chelsea's way of communicating, and it'll blatantly tell you this, and it's always right. It also will share with you, regardless of comparing to other people, it will share with you their strengths and their weaknesses in the workplace, their tendencies, and then it'll populate an additional 20 or so interview questions that you can ask them as follow-up. What's really neat about Omnia is it's going to also be able to tell if somebody's super stressed and anxious and maybe they underperformed. On the contrary, it can tell if people are lying. Like it asks questions in certain ways that it's going to catch them. So, or maybe they're not lying. Maybe they're people pleasing, right? I don't think people lie. I think people want to impress and they want to do and pick the answer they think that you want them to. So the whole assessment is really impressive. It has never been wrong. Ever. Every time that I'm having a learning opportunity or a learning moment with somebody on the team, I reflect back to their Omnia and I'll go look at it and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's why we're not getting over this little hurdle. Like I need to take this approach. I need to come at it from this angle. It's like the greatest look into somebody's mind that I've ever had during my time of owning a business. So this one thing alone, so when I first started really getting into fixing my hiring process, I only had the Omnia. I didn't have the Test Gorilla, like the skills assessment. The Omnia, I will say, is significantly more expensive than the Test Gorilla, which is why I have it as step 3. So before I used to send out, and Omnia will tell you this, it's better that you send the test out early on so that they don't have any preconceived notions of what they think you want. However, the test is anywhere between, I think, like $150 to $250 a pop. If you're doing mass hiring, not ideal. So I've just found that it's better for me to do it later in the process and protect some of those funds. So super great, Omnia, some type of culture personality assessment that compares to existing. Last thing I'll say on step 3 is in the last couple of years, I've hired some amazing employees and their Omnias came back as compatible. So it'll tell you at the top, compatible or dissimilar and why. Well, now instead of, as the company's been growing, I don't want to compare everybody to me and Donovan, right? Like just our direct reports, just that top level of leadership should be compared to us. Now I want to compare incoming employees to the top performers that we've ever had in those same roles. So now I'm using theirs as the baseline for comparison as opposed to Donovan and I, who absolutely do not have the same skill sets in that side of the business as they do. Hence why we've hired them and need them, right? All right, number 4, this is the Zoom. So this Zoom is always done with Donovan. This will be the first time that they generally meet Donovan during the hiring process. I'll be on it as well. What I do ahead of the Zoom call is I give 10 scenarios. We call them account management or account executive scenarios. And ahead of time, they work through them and then they bring their answers to the meeting. 24 hours before the interview, I ask that they send me over their responses so we can read through it and have a good conversation. But basically, I'm giving them, these are 10 things that will absolutely happen within the first 30 days that you're working here. Tell me how you would solve these problems. And that has been such an amazing addition to the process. And the reason is you don't hire people to do a job. You hire people to solve problems, right? So if you give them a list of 10 problems that they will absolutely encounter and you say, go solve it, you can see how their mind works. You can see what resources they think they need or, don't. You get this perfect insight into how they will approach what they will do at your job without knowing your tech, your resources, your team, the support that they have. That has also been great feedback from the employees as we hire them. It's been like, man, this is exactly what we thought it would be. Those account scenarios, I literally did every single one of them. That's so funny. Love that. So it also gives like a good conversation base for the Zoom call, right? So we start the Zoom call, they get their intro to Donovan, they kind of get Donovan caught up on what they've been going through, they get a little bit of time to establish some rapport, then we dive into the account scenarios. And it's super interesting. Like I said, you're just going to learn so much about them that, you're not going to learn just asking open-ended random interview questions. This is also the point where if the Omnia came back with anything concerning, this is the point in the process that I would go ahead and ask those Omnia questions just to reaffirm those answers and the things that we need. So that's number 4. Getting to the last one. So we've gone back and forth on this one over the years, but it works when you have the right team. So doing a team or a group interview can be good if you if you feel like the team that you have that's going to be a part of that process truly reflects your culture, your values, where you're going, who you are today, and who you want to be tomorrow. The worst thing you can do, and again, I'm telling you this because I did it, is, have somebody in a position that is not sustainable. They're not following processes and procedures, but you're just too dang busy to figure out, that high level of a hire right now. So then you just keep going like everything's fine. And then you put them in front of other prospective people who are like, oh God, is that really the culture? That's the opposite of what she said. Do not do that. So only do this team, group, manager interview, whatever you want to call it, if you deeply respect the person on your side that's going to be representing you and that you foresee them to be here in the future. If you don't have that yet, don't do this part. Like just ignore it. Just you and whoever make the final decision. If you are going to be doing the team, group, manager interview, whatever you want to call it, no more than 2 or 3 people on your team. It's honestly, I don't even like 3. I like 2. Most of the time, I just like 1. Who's the direct person, the direct report that they're going to be working with? If they're going to be joining a team that already exists of 2 people, then yes, we'll put both of them in. And I'll go ahead and prep my team. Hey, here are some questions that, if the conversation gets a little awkward or quiet, these are some things that I would love for you to ask. Something that's really important too on the group interview is, as the leader, you want to make sure that you are giving them the space to collaborate without your oversight. So I will always intentionally log out at least 15 to 20 minutes early and just say, oh, all right, guys, well, this is the part where you can all stay and collaborate. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conversation. Candidate, I'll get back with you at this exact time by this date next week, right? Setting those expectations. We expect them to communicate with our clients, anticipated deadlines, all of that. We need to show that throughout the entire process. But my point was get out of the room, get out of the Zoom room, and let them have a real conversation. If you are doing, in-person hiring, have them go out to get a drink, or, if you guys don't drink alcohol, go and get a coffee, whatever it is. If it's Zoom though, let them get a little bit more casual, you get out. And that is really where all the magic happens, because when you go and you talk to your team, that's when they're like, oh yeah, they said this and this, and you learn things that you would have never learned otherwise. It gives them, because you honor them as much as yourself in this process, it gives them the opportunity to be like, hey, is Chelsea chill as she seems? Oh, hell no, is what they say, or whatever it is, right? Like, it gives them the opportunity to ask these questions. Hey, when she mentioned that things can get intense, like, what does that actually look like during the day? She said something about our job starts when someone tells us no. Like, what the hell does that mean? Like, those are the questions they can ask and get that true, transparent glimpse into your business. But let me tell you, this only works if you have developed a strong culture of accountability and feedback with your team, and you trust them to represent you the way that you should be represented, right? So trust and transparency is huge in that process. So that's my 5-step hiring process. I really hope that future candidates don't come and listen to this podcast and outsmart me. This is really supposed to be for all the businesses out there and managers who are looking to refine some of their hiring process. So again, I start with a phone interview, really just to establish that rapport, make sure they sound good on the phone, detail what this position is, and get that kind of, I know it's a silly word for business, but the vibe there. Before that, they already know everything about your culture, about your values. They can read it and they can say yes or no for themselves before even scheduling that interview, right? Number 2, they complete the skills assessment, because I think all of us think we're better at things than we actually are, or like that story, we might think we're okay when we're actually pretty awesome. So let the skill assessment tell us exactly. That needs to match what's important in terms of outcome for performance in that role. Number 3, complete the online Omnia assessment. This is culture, personality, compare it to whoever they're going to be working with. It's basically the psychological side of the hiring process. Zoom interview with scenarios, so real things that they're going to encounter in the job. How are they going to solve those problems? And then last but not least, potentially a third interview or some type of team group interview so they can get a real insight into the team, understand the culture transparently, because remember, our goal is for them during the onboarding process to say, you are exactly who I thought you were, and I love working here. So I hope that this helped you a little bit. This is our 5-step hiring process. If you have things that you do in your hiring process, I am constantly refining everything. Like you guys already know, my biggest value, if something can be done better, it should be. So if you can do this better, tell me. I am all ears, open to all the feedback. And that is a wrap, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode on the Ethos Effect podcast, taking a deep dive into the talent acquisition process. I hope you find this helpful. If you did, go ahead, share, like, subscribe, follow us on all the platforms. We are here for you. Can't wait to see you next week. Have a good one.